Welcome to ForexTV.com's PM Exchange. It's Monday, March 3rd. I'm Remy Hoki. Today I'm joined by Ashraf Laidi from CMC Markets. Good afternoon, Ashraf.
Good afternoon, Remy.
Great to have you here on a Monday afternoon.
Happy Monday to you too.
Well, as we near the end of the New York session, the U.S. dollar has pared back earlier losses against the majors. We had comments from the ECB out today, but we've also been seeing commodity prices soar across the board. And the theme in today's session, as well as previous sessions, seems to be short dollars, short equities. But let's start out with euro dollar first. Ahead of this week's central bank meetings, especially with Thursday's ECB, where do you see euro dollar going in the short term?
I think it's really going to go higher. I mean, I don't see it going drastically lower unless we get some really unexpectedly strong numbers. The ISM services in the U.S. on Wednesday, the ADP, factory orders, Thursday numbers, the jobless claims. At the end of the day, Trichet is going to be put on the spot after the decision, and people are going to ask him, what do you think? And then he's going to say, well, we reiterate the strong dollar policy of the United States. And meaning, that glass, it's half full, half empty. Well, we want that glass to be half full. But, he's not going to really say anything else because, as I'm sure all of the viewers know and see, the ECB want a strong euro as long as oil is so expensive.
Okay, now that we've covered euro dollar, let's move on to dollar yen. Overnight in the Asian session, we saw global equities tumble and we saw the Nikkei take a hit of 4.9%. But as we end the New York session, we've seen the major indexes decline, and although dollar yen has edged up above 103 again, in the near term, where do you see dollar yen headed?
Yes. I'm talking to you right now, and it's 3:30, and I want to know 3:40. I want to know what the stock market is doing in the U.S. today, because that really is going to determine what the Nikkei is going to do. Because we had a 4.5 or 4.6 decline, decline. If we see further declines, I think we really could see, a dollar yen is really facing big resistance at 103.80. 103.40 and 103.80. But I really think it needs to belong back and retest 103 and then towards 102.50. I don't think we're going to break below, let's say, 102.20 today. I do not really think so, unless we have such a big bad close in the U.S. today, and that will follow, let's say, another 3% decline in the Nikkei. Then maybe we could see that. But I think the best play is to be long yen, short Canadian, long yen, short sterling.
Okay, Ashraf, you just mentioned the Canadian currency, and looking ahead to tomorrow's session, in the North American session, we have the BOC coming out with their rate announcement. Earlier on in today's session, we got weaker than expected Q4 GDP from our neighbor up north, but there has been talk that there might be a possible 50 basis point rate cut tomorrow. So based on your expectations, where do you see dollar CAD headed? Yeah,
actually, after the data today, it's becoming more of a possibility that we're going to do 50 basis points. But even if they do 25, Remy, even if they do 25, I think they're going to open the door for further rate cuts, and that will really weigh on the Canadian dollar. So I really see a very good chance for dollar Canada to go above 99.70, 98.95, 98.70, and I really think we could go towards parity. We could see parity actually tomorrow. We could because look, there is no data in the U.S. tomorrow, right? There is this number from Canada, from there is the rate cut, and I think that could definitely weigh on the Canadian versus the dollar. Like I said, Canadian yen, we could be testing 103.50, 103.60, and Aussie Canada. Aussie Canada is what I like it because probably by the time you guys will view this, the Aussies would have raised rates already by 25 basis points to 7.25%. But what you have to really pay attention to is 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time release of retail sales from Australia. And if these come in lower than 0.9 or 0.8%, they may not be good for the Aussie. If they're strong, if they're, let's say, at least 0.9 or above 1%, then you really could see Aussie Canadian pushing much higher, and you could see the Aussie dollar pushing higher for me.
Okay, and one other central bank that will be announcing rates this week on Thursday morning is the Bank of England. So let's shift our focus over to sterling. We saw sterling dollar test the 199 level earlier, but now it is back beneath that level. So for sterling dollar as well as for sterling yen, what's your near-term forecast?
Okay, if you're going to ask me, are they going to cut rates or not? I can tell you the consensus, and the consensus is saying no. Do I really believe the consensus? I think that this time they're going to choose not to do it because they really have some inflationary problems. However, euro sterling, you're looking, there's a very good chance that we could go all the way to 67, 67.80. We could probably retest 68, not retest, but test 68 pence. Sterling dollar, cable, you've got a resistance at 98.50, 98.60. And then you've got really 99.10 is a big resistance. I think 99.10, 99.20 is a big resistance. And we've seen this movie before where the sterling goes up against the dollar on the heels of a very weak US dollar. But really, it's still a sell against the euro. It's still a sell against the Aussie. It's still a sell against, I would say, against the yen. Maybe sterling Canadian, but really the cases. So I would like to reiterate then, our longs for Euro Canada. We were in this show 2 weeks ago, and a week ago we were saying Euro Canada is going to go to from 147 to 148. It is right now at 1.5. So I really think there's a very good chance, Remy, that tomorrow, it would be in currencies to make money, you got to play the weakest against the strongest, all right? And of course you got to buy one versus the other, and you buy the weakest. And I think to capitalize on your moves tomorrow, even though dollar Canada is going to hit parity or may hit parity, you may not want to chance that unless you have, let's say, a short dollar position and you're not doing very well in it and you want to hedge it. So you want to buy the dollar and you want to buy the dollar against the Canadian dollar. And I think that will get you close to parity. But really, long Aussie Canadian, long Aussie sterling, long Euro Canadian, and short sterling yen. So really, these are the levels.
Okay, Ashraf, and last but not least, before we wrap it up, we've covered all the central bank rate announcements that are coming out this week, and we've highlighted that tomorrow's session here in the U.S., we don't have key data coming out, but Wednesday brings forth the ADP, which means on Friday we get the employment situation report. So that comes after all the central bank rate announcements. So if you could just briefly give us your forecast for NFP as well as unemployment.
There's a very good chance that we could see another minus number, and we could see minus 12. Minus 10, minus 15%. Okay, unemployment. I really think that we're going to regain the 5% level. Maybe we could really surprise and go to 5.1. But Remy, guess what? Do not forget the jobless claims on Thursday. The jobless claims were very awful last week, last Thursday. They came in at 378 to 376,000, while they were expected to go to 350. By the way, this is a number where the higher the number, the worse it is. And I think there's a very good chance that we could probably, even if we retreat from 378 to 350, that could be bad. But there's something else also, Remy, is the employment component, of the services ISM, okay, and that could remain again for I believe the third consecutive month below 50, and that could be quite bad for the US dollar. But again, rather than telling people sell dollar, sell dollar, sell dollar, you've got a lot of the crosses on the side that will give you plenty of play.
Okay, Ashraf, thank you very much for clarifying the key points of the data releases, and thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you, it's a pleasure.
This has been your Forex News with Ashraf Laidi from CMC Markets. Next up, we have your equities and commodities wrap-up for the day. U.S. stocks saw another choppy session with the major indexes mixed and with the Dow and NASDAQ down only slightly. Wall Street continued to weigh the rallying commodities with weakness in U.S. data. Earlier, the Institute of Supply Management's manufacturing index came in slightly better than expected at 48.3. Market forecasts had called for a reading of 48.1. Meanwhile, the Commerce Department reported that construction spending fell the sharpest in 14 years. The January figure declined 1.7%, following the downwardly revised 1.3% in the prior month. At the closing bell, the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 7.49 to close at 12,258.90. The tech-heavy NASDAQ fell 12.88 points to end at 2,258.60. And the S&P 500 ended up 0.71 at 1331.34. In the fixed income market, U.S. long-term Treasury bonds declined on profit-taking, and as the major equity indexes traded almost flat on the day. The benchmark 10-year Treasury note fell with its yield up at 3.54% from 3.52% in the previous session. The 30-year bond fell with its yield up at 4.43% from 4.42% late Friday. And the 2-year note was also lower with a yield of 1.65%. Taking a look at energy, NYMEX crude oil futures hit another record high, just 5 cents away from the $104 barrel level. Commodities rallied today as the U.S. dollar touched another record low against the euro. In earlier trade, April crude saw an all-time high at $103.95 a barrel. The benchmark contract ended the session with a gain of 61 cents at $102.45 a barrel. In other energy futures, April heating oil added 3.39 cents on the day to settle at $2.8408 a gallon. April gas futures added 0.21 cent to end at $2.672 a gallon. Nat gas futures fell 2 cents to end the session at $9.346 per million BTU. Over in the metals complex, COMEX gold futures hit another record high of $992 an ounce. Prices are edging closer to the key psychological level of $1,000 an ounce. The April gold contract added $9.20 to close at $984.20 an ounce. Other precious metals soared today, with platinum hitting a record high of $2,245 an ounce. The contract rallied, gaining $60.90, closing at $2,241.60 an ounce. March silver soared 26 cents to end at $20.07 an ounce, and March copper added 8 cents to close at $3.93 a pound. This afternoon, we're joined by Bobby Firestone from Alaron Trading. He'll weigh in on the commodities rally and also give us his forecast looking ahead.
Well, today was a very dramatic day in the energy markets. Now, we had a very dramatic up move in early trading where we saw crude on April get very close to $104 a barrel. And we saw an equally dramatic move as we got into the close, as we saw it drop off substantially. And as we speak right now, crude's trading up only about 31 cents on the day, back in the low twos. Now what we're seeing is we're starting to see a lot of the signs that a top, at least on the near term, is getting put into place. We're seeing an increase in volatility, and also we're starting to see those bizarre things that start to happen. And we're talking about commodities as a whole. And last week we had the broker at MF Global losing $142 million. And this week, when we look at the commitment traders data, well, we're starting to see the signs of a lot of blind buying in. We saw the spec on the large specs, their long position increased over 50% from the previous week, and that type of maneuver is really a sign that we're getting a lot of money piling in, and it looks like they're piling in pretty blindly. So what I'm afraid that we're going to see here, that may not be this week, but coming up, is we're going to see everyone try and run for the door at the same time. We're going to get what I call the Three Stooges effect. If you weren't the first one through, you're stuck. So overall, looking crude oil, I'm bearish on just what we've seen, everything we've seen around it. In the metals, they're continuing to hold strong, mostly on dollar weakness, and I am expecting a correction in both gold and silver, though we may see $1,000 an ounce gold before that can happen.
That was Bobby Firestone from Alaron Trading with his commodities commentary. And that's it for today's edition of PM Exchange. I'm Remy Hokie. Join us tomorrow morning for your latest news update right here on ForexTV.com. Have a good night.